Hello and grüß Gott. This is going to be a companion video to go with two of our other videos. One is the front valve cover gasket video, and the other one is the spark plug changing video. And the reason those two go with this one is it's kind of a convoluted deal to change the spark plugs and the rear valve cover gasket on this transverse mounted V6 engine. And this is the Toyota 3-liter engine for the 2001 Toyota Camry. So one of the things you're going to need is some spark plug wires, and that's Toyota part number 19037-211. You're going to need an air surge gasket, which is Toyota part number 17176-62030. You're going to need a throttle body gasket, which is part number 22271-210. You're going to need some what they call seal packing, and this is for the oil pan or camshaft housing, and this is to keep it from leaking around where the camshaft is, and that's Toyota part number 00295-00103. You're going to need these special valve cover bolts. They're one use only. They're Toyota part number 980-10288. And like I said, these are one use only. Once they compress, you don't reuse them. I have some iridium spark plugs. These are the single type spark plug instead of the dual electrode. And these are BKR 6EIX-11. And for the wasted spark system, you no longer need dual electrode if you go to the iridium. So the reason being the old ones had an erosion problem, and that's a long discussion all in itself. You're going to need some valve cover gaskets. So Magnum was a very highly rated gasket set. So I got these, and their part number VS25010. And these valve cover gaskets are made in the USA, which is great. The spark plug tube seals are made in Taiwan, which is also great, but I did not use those on the front because they weren't bad. And so with all of these items, hopefully we'll have enough to get everything done for this job. So the first thing we're going to do is start pulling a few items apart, and we'll show you that here in a second. So we've already done our front valve cover gasket, and here's where we've left off. We've left the spark plug wires off. We've left the cover plate off. This tube here is basically off. We have the radiator drained, and we have the hose off here. We have all the electrical wiring pulled back and laid back to the side so it's out of the way. And next thing we're going to do is take all this plumbing loose and move it out of the way so that we can take this intake plenum off, or this whole manifold assembly. And the way I'm going to try to do it is I'm going to try to disconnect the EGR system and this area here and all of this area over here, and just sort of set those out of the way. I've seen where other people have had to take all of this completely out of the vehicle. I don't know if that's necessary. From looking at it, I don't see why you can't swing it out of the way if you're real careful. So we're going to try that method first. And so when I come back, we're going to have taken some of this stuff loose, and we'll show you how that ends up. Okay, so at this point what we've done is we've taken out the top of the air cleaner box and taken the filter off. A couple of hoses you have to disconnect. This one here, there's one down here. Also, you have to take the mass airflow sensor loose, and you're going to take apart the resonator assembly, everything all the way up to this point here at the throttle body assembly. And there's also a hose that comes out from the engine over to the resonator. So you're going to take all those off. Then over here on the vacuum line rail area, there's two nuts that hold that on. We took those loose. We're going to take loose this vacuum line to this dash pod here, and we're going to take this vacuum line loose. And we've taken pictures of everything, which is always a good idea. We're going to flip this up and over out of the way, and we're going to wire tie it in place so it doesn't flip back on us. And then we're going to start doing some more disassembly, and we'll come back and talk about it. All right, we've got the throttle body loose. In order to get that off, we just actually moved it over here out of the way. So you don't have to take all these cables loose or anything. All you do is have to take these 3 coolant lines off and a couple of plug-ins. So we got all that done. So now what we're going to do is, looks like we have to, there's a plug in there that's loose, so that's good. Now what we have to do is take this EGR part loose. And by the way, earlier I said this is a dashpot, I meant EGR. And then there's a couple of bolts in the brackets on the back. And then there's a grounding bolt over here, and there's another vacuum line. And then some bolts that hold it in here, and then we should be able to pull this whole thing off. And at that point, what we're going to do is we're going to put some tape over it so nothing gets inside the engine. So we're going to get to that point, and then we're going to come back, and we don't think we have to take anything off with the fuel rails based upon what we're seeing here so far. At this point, what we've done is we've taped up over here on the EGR recirculation. We took the 2 nuts off on the other side. There's a ground wire on the very back of this manifold. We've taken it loose. We've taken the 2 bolts loose that are the support brackets for this manifold in the back. The vacuum line over here, the ground's over here on this other side, and there's 2 8mm hex head bolts here and here, and then there's some nuts here that you have to take off, and the whole thing should lift up, come back, and then we'll immediately take some tape and tape up so that nothing gets into the engine. All right, so we've gotten the manifold area cleared and taped up here, and these are the fuel injector driver wires, and you'll see that the material here is just, all the plastic is just dead. So we're going to replace it, but before we do that, we're actually just going to fold it up and out of the way, and then when we put it back together, we'll replace it with some new wire loom. So we'll get all that done, and then right now we're going to start finding out what else we need to take loose in here to get this valve cover off, but at least we're getting close. If you're wanting to change your rear spark plugs, and that's why you're watching this part of the video, because it's a companion for our spark plug video, as you'll see, the holes to access the spark plugs are in like the most precarious position possible. I absolutely don't see any way you could get to them without pulling this intake plenum off. So we have our 16mm spark plug wrench on one of them with a medium length extension. So we're going to take that one out, and then we're going to inspect it and make sure there's no oil in the holes. And if all that's good, we're going to go ahead and replace the spark plugs. And just like on the front part of the engine, you put them in finger tight, and then you turn them 1/2 of a turn. So in this case, due to the fact that we don't have any room, we'll have to turn it 2/4 turns. So we're going to get that done, and that's how you change the spark plugs. And we're going to put all new wires in. So really that closes that part. So we're just going to get it done, and then we'll come back and start working on taking all this other part off. All right, we're ready to reinstall the rear cover. We put a new gasket in it. We have the Toyota seal packing we're going to prepare around the edges, especially on the lower area and where the cam is. And then we're going to put this on within 15 minutes, and then we're going to put the bolts in, and they get torqued down to 6 foot-pounds of torque, and they actually come to a stop, and then you give them 6 foot-pounds of torque, and they're one-use only bolts. I'll come back in a minute and I'll show you that. So this is the type of bolt you use to bolt down the cover. It's Toyota part number 90080-10288. These are one-use only. So you need 8 per both valve covers. So you need 16 total. 8 per valve cover, 16 total. So you torque these down to 6 foot-pounds, and what you do is you'll find out the shoulder on these comes to a stop, and then you torque it to 6 foot-pounds. But you want to use a crisscross pattern as you're tightening it down. So we have the rear cover put back on, and now we're going to reassemble just like we took it apart. So that's really all to this video. So I will say it's a very, very difficult job. Probably a good reason why the dealer, even though they charged quite a bit of money to do this job, never did it. So so watch out for those dealers. So that's all there is to this video. Thanks for watching. Tschüss.